Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and this is our special edition of Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We come your way Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for our special edition of Tell Me Your Story, of which this is the 9 o'clock version. And we're also here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9, and all of these programs are streamed live at richarddugan.com. We are also podcasting at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry. We're also on YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. We also ask that you subscribe and click notifications so that you're notified the next time a conversation pops up, and you'll be able to take a listen or view, whichever you prefer. We also ask that if you can support the work we're doing financially, we would be gratefully appreciated. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask you for the email address to whom you're sending, say, put in Richard at richarddugan.com. That's Richard at richarddugan.com. We also ask that you take time to go within during this, the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to that quiet, peaceful, calm place that also may give you access to what we're going to talk about today as we continue talking with Lumari. But go into that quiet, peaceful place and listen to that still, small voice. And as I just stated, yes, we are here with Lumari of Lumari.com. She has a free gift for you. We'll talk to you about that in just a few moments, but we're going to continue our conversation in regards to the Akashic Records. And it's Collective Keepers of Divine Expression by Lumari. And Lumari, welcome back to the program. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, Richard, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, today we're diving into chapter 2, which is sharing the trust. And the wisdom and information in the Akashic Records it's rich, it's expansive, and truly life-changing. And the information itself is neutral, and your participation is personal. And how you use this wisdom creates responsibility and accountability. And that's something I think that it seems, Lumari, that I feel as though in one sense we've sort of lost those particular attributes, specifically of taking responsibility for who and what we are and what we say and do and so forth, and even think, and this whole aspect of accountability, that I own it. I deleted that file and I shouldn't have, and I've tried to recover it, and I did that. It wasn't somebody else. I'm not a victim. Do you find that when people dive into the Akashic Records, when they learn how to do it and they access this information, they actually do start to become more of a responsible and an accountable individual?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that the Akashic Records help you become accountable,
Okay.
but it definitely is a teaching of accountability and responsibility. So there's one thing we're looking at here with the Akashic Records, and that is that this is way more wisdom than and knowledge and information that you're going to get on, I don't know, Microsoft's computer base, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you look at it, this is like wisdom of the ages, wisdom of how things are created, wisdom on the different evolution of plants and what they do, and communities and beliefs and all of these different things. And a lot of wisdom that we might not even be able to put a label on.
Okay.
The Akashic Records, what's very interesting about it, I mean, they have their aspect of knowledge and responsibility, which is that by the way you vibrate and resonate and your intention is what you get access. Okay? So let's think about it, in a funny way. Think about new houses now. If you have a 3-year-old, most of the cabinets on the bottom you've locked. You don't want your 3-year-old crawling around and opening up the bottom cabinets and getting in there and touching things that are not good for them. And in the same respect, the Akashic Records is saying, excuse me, you're not ready for this information, or you don't have the integrity for this information, or et cetera, therefore you don't have access to this. That's their accountability, which is really powerful, because when you think of the wisdom of the universe, if you're not really in integrity, or if you don't understand what you're receiving, what you're accessing, a million different things can happen. One, it could be so big that it blows your mind, and now you can't access it because now you're just confused. Or you might access it and you might think of it in a different way that it wasn't meant to be thought of. So it's teaching you or showing you different things, and you're interpreting it a certain way, which isn't the right interpretation. So now you have another level of confusion. So that's on their end, on how they hold on to and create the sacredness of the information. Now we look at our side, or anyone's side who's trying to access, right? You want to be accountable for what you receive. So if you're looking at specific information, the way you interpret it and the way you use it and the way you apply it has different levels of integrity, and you're responsible for that. And there may be things that you do that, oops, you didn't get it. But for the most part, you have a level of integrity where you can look at it in responsibility and accountability, where you don't take this information, whatever, let's just say it's a scientific information, and you look at it and go, and it's meant to create something wonderful, and you flip it over so it does harm. You're responsible for the harm. The information is just the information. You're responsible for how you apply it. On the other hand, you may access information and look at it and go, oh, wow, this is so healing. I could use this in so many different ways that it makes a difference for other people. Still in integrity, still using it, but now the outcome is a whole other thing. And that's a level of trust that the Akashic has for you to be able to participate. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, again, each one of us, we
Welcome to Tell Me.
we become accountable and so forth, and we take responsibility. We own who and what we are, and it isn't necessarily an outside source. It may be we may be influenced, or can I borrow the word from a previous sequence that we produced called we might be inspired
Yes,
to be a little bit more. Yeah. And it's a work in progress from that standpoint that, it's not 100% right off the top of the bat. It's something that we do have to work into, and we can get there, and it'll be okay. We're talking about, of course, as I've said before, we're talking about the Akashic records, and we have talked about it from the standpoint of what it is and what it isn't in the past. And one of the other things that I want to take a look at here as we are talking about the Akashic records, and I'm locating the item that I want to look off of here, and that is that as far as the Akashic records are concerned, and in this case, sharing the trust. Not all beings have the framework of responsibility, as we were just talking about, firmly within them. Also, while an explorer may have this responsibility within him or her, the next level of informational sharing may not. An individual or group of individuals may have a specific understanding and wisdom that generates a very high level of responsibility, and yet their peers or prodigy may not appreciate that same level of knowing. If I can share this real quickly, at my father's memorial, at least one of my sisters, if not two, the two youngers, they expressed that my father was a very honest man. i.e., he was responsible, he was accountable, and so forth. I consider that part of that. Honesty is part of that. That they did not know anyone as honest as he. And obviously being a father figure, that was quite impressed upon them. And I don't necessarily want to get into the honesty, but in this instance, for example, how, what I was just sharing there about their peers or prodigy, they may not appreciate the same level of knowing, if you will, or taking accountability and responsibility. And yet my sisters recognized that in him. So
Right.
it is possible. But a lot of times the peers or the siblings, if you will, the prodigy, however you want to phrase it, they're off living their own lives. They're being exposed to the rest of the world. And the rest of the world may not be quite as integral, if you will.
Right.
Is this information, and I'm saying what you said before, that it isn't the Akashic records that do this. It's the individual that chooses this. But are there elements of our personal record that can show us, so to speak, the pros and the cons in this regard?
Well, one thing, so in the general understanding of the Akashic records is that the wisdom of the universe is there, and it's actually unfathomable. So you can't even think of what's actually there, because we can only think of wisdom of how we think of wisdom. So there's a whole bunch there that we have no clue about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it like an analogy to that is, we know what molecules are. We have no idea what the space between the molecules is. We can call it space, but we don't know what's in it.
Right.
Because we're only aware of the molecules, which is a big leap from, 20,000 years ago, where we probably weren't. But what's between the molecules, what's between the planets, it's just space to us. So that it's just something to understand, so that when you're looking at your individual Akashic records, there's also certain things that you will be able to receive and understand about your life, your past life, your path, your purpose, and there's other things that won't be revealed because you can't, using a fun word, you can't grok it.
Mm-hmm. Great word. I love it.
Yeah. You just can't. And it could be because it's too complicated for you. It could be because knowing that might shift how you do your life and participate in it now. It might also be that, it really is beyond you at this moment. Now, you can still tune in and ask questions, and that's really important. And the thing that fascinates me a lot about the Akashic Records is how it holds all of this wisdom. You can imagine that the beings that are the keepers, how much integrity and wisdom and perception they have to have. Like, they actually have to know what's there and how it moves and who can play and who's not ready yet and how to bring it forward and all of that. It's amazing.
Well, and I don't know, the thoughts come to mind, and I've always said the universe asks questions. I'm just along for the ride. We're talking primarily here, when it comes to the Akashic records, about the human species.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a sidebar question that you can or you don't have to answer, but necessarily. Are the Akashic records there for other beings, other intelligent beings, or for that matter, even here on this earth, animals, other living things on the planet?
Well, let's just say this way first, is since the Akashic records and the keepers of the Akashic, who are conscious beings, right, hold the wisdom of the universe, then everything that exists or has existed or may be coming into existence is all contained as wisdom in the Akashic records. So if we're talking about animals, if we're talking about like the people who made the pyramids, if we're talking about maybe beings who came to the planet who were the original humans, but we think they might have been, evolution, but they actually weren't. If we're talking about, a species of flowers that dates back 2,000 years, but it actually was formed by 5 different other flowers who came together to make the new one, all of that is there.
Okay.
So your dog, that dog's life is part of the Akashic Records. The flowers in your garden are part of the Akashic Records, because the Akashic Records isn't simply about humanity. It's about the wisdom of the universe. So in the Akashic Records, there may be, I have a sense of humor about these things. So there may be, a place in the Akashic Records that says, how to build a planet in 25 days or less. You go in there and you go, oh, well, can you let me do this one? Am I competent enough? Am I have enough integrity to be able to build the planet? And then they'll give you the list of things you can do and you can't do, and you go in.
Yeah.
But Akashic Records know how planets evolve. They know how the stars move. They know the beings that are conscious, but they also know, and there's a conversation that we have that, beings and animals are conscious, but other things are not. Like, people don't think that the dirt is conscious, or the ocean is conscious, or rocks are conscious, or plants are conscious. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I'm not saying they're not. The Akashic Records are tracking them and understanding the wisdom, and in a way documenting it, but also in a way containing it, so that the wisdom of each and every is present. And the keepers are delighted in this. Now, for us as humans, most of the time we go to the Akashic to get much more specific answers about our personal life, not about the wisdom of the universe.
Right.
And that's understandable. It's not being selfish to try and know more about yourself.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, getting back to the discussion of the Akashic Records, apparently the information does not create negative results. This would apply to pretty much anything, a tool, whatever you want to put in there, because it is the use of the information by those responsible for the information that can cause negative results. We could go into many different examples, but a lot of times, it's like, I think about some of the things that have been done to other people. Party one does something to party two, and I understand how in our society here in America, okay, we need to get a handle on this, so we need to regulate whatever it was that individual used to inflict harm on party two, when in fact that isn't really the answer. Again, I understand the reason behind it,
sure,
but that's not the answer, because you have to deal with the source, which is party one, the person of party one.
Well, that's a really good point, because with the Akashic Records, if you look at it like that, they won't disclose, and I'm using like more common words than they would use, but they won't disclose information unless you personally are advanced enough, mature enough, responsible enough, clear enough that you will use that for good. That you won't use it against, that you won't use it contrary to what it is about. And that's how the Akashic Records are. Now, there's ways of finding out information in our world that that people access, and they do. Some people do good things, and some people don't. But with the Akashic Records, because that's the specific that we're talking about, they don't reveal anything that you would use for harm. Now, in talking about this world that we're in, part of the reason for limiting the things is because you don't have control over everybody in the world, whether they are intentionally using it for negativity or they just mess up. You don't know either way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
there's a limit on those things, or sometimes there should be a limit on those things. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
other side of that, of course, is what we would call education. So to be able to teach people, train people, move them into a higher understanding and perspective of those things would also eliminate some of the need of the restriction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of times that really takes even more integrity. Like silly things, right? Okay, I'll use a really common, silly example. Okay, probably everybody has bleach in their kitchen or in their bathroom. Do some cleaning. Most of us know don't mess around with bleach.
Right.
Don't drink it. Don't put it on your skin. Don't throw it on the floor. Don't put it in the garden. All of those things, right? And you have to train people to know that you don't mess with this. Now, if you're a parent and you have young children, that bleach needs to be in a place where they can't access it. And it doesn't open easily and they can't play with it. So that's the example of both things that we're talking about. One is educating on, okay, the bleach is good when you use it like this, but otherwise, it's harmful. And part of that is education. The other part is lock it away if you've got kids who don't understand that.
Mm.
That's the limitation, the restriction of its use.
Right. No, I understand
Is
that.
that a good example for what you're talking about?
It is. And then I like to look at things from the standpoint of, sometimes there's the principle or the concept, whatever, is a double-edged sword. And here's the other part of the accountability and responsibility of this information in terms of, what you do with it. And maybe this comes also from the perspective too, as you've shared before, how we're not going to be given too much information because it would burn us up, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the real catch. Now, there's a difference between ignorance and stupidity. Ignorance is you don't know that you don't know.
Right.
Stupidity is you know and you still act as if you don't. Once you have heard it, read it, experienced it, felt it, however you want to, whatever framework you want to put that in, once that has happened, you can't now you have to deal with it. And I've used that concept on this program in the past. And usually I wait until the end of the program to say, now you've heard this information. Now you're going to have to deal with it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday you're going to have experience and it's going to remind you of this program and what we talked about, whatever it was the conversation was about. And you're going to have to deal with it. And that's where that level of responsibility and accountability comes in terms of choosing to acquire the information. I mean, maybe that's a better way of prefacing it by saying that you better be ready to deal with it, because once it's out, you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Well, and it's important. I like how you said that, because with many of the things that we learn, for the most part, there isn't a high level of responsibility. I mean, learning the alphabet and learning how to read is a part of growth. Learning numbers and learning how to do math is, it's a part of growth. You want to be able to do math for all the different reasons. You want to be able to read for all the different reasons. then there's also a higher level of awareness is where is your focus going to be? And that is your choice of connection and awareness and conscious participation. So when you're looking at the choice of what you're going to read after you've learned how to read, understanding that whatever you're going to read is going to influence you. So if you're reading, it doesn't, I'm not using it as a negativity, I'm using it as an expression of knowledge. If you're reading about spirituality, your perception about spirituality is going to change. If you're reading about carpentry, your perception about tools, the furniture in your house, what a house looks like is going to change because you're going to learn about that. If you're reading about science, your perceptions are going to change. And understanding that, because as you get older and you get more advanced in that, then you really know where you're focusing and why you're focusing. When you're exploring, you don't necessarily know all of the different ways it's going to influence you, but you want to be able to be aware of the fact that it is going to influence.
Mm. You know, I like watching these short videos, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, you know, just the short, maybe 15, 30-second kind of things. And they have this one where this guy wearing a yellow hard hat and protective goggles or glasses, he's watching guys and gals doing work at construction sites or where heavy equipment's used or they're laying concrete and this kind of stuff. And there are two different types of these videos. One is where you have incredibly efficient individuals who have found ways of accomplishing the task, even with heavy equipment, in an extremely efficient and effective way. And they get the job done and they get it done right. Then there are what they call the fails. You know, where this one guy, he'll take a wheelbarrow full of concrete, of wet concrete, and he's got to go up this hill, but the hill is made of a single, maybe 4 or 6 inch wide board. And he has to put the wheel in the center and he's got to walk up that board. And he gets up to the top. Suddenly he loses his balance. It flips back and covers him with concrete.
Oh, gosh.
Well, he'll never do that again. He's learned. At least you hope he's learned. But it's those kinds of examples that I watch on some of those videos, as well as in day-to-day life with people driving, including myself, where I hope that I never do that because I don't want that result, you know, because that then a lot of paperwork and phone calls and this and that and the other, which I don't want to deal with. Whereas, I found, look at this, man, I got done with this really quick and it's exactly the way I want it. Sounds great, looks great, feels great, et cetera, et cetera. And it's one of those things where, you know, I can't go back, you know, as REM once said in one of their songs, it's the end of the world as we know it. Every minute that passes, the old world is gone. The new world is here, so to speak. And we bring forth from that old world those experiences, those lessons learned. And it seems to me that the Akashic records are there to assist us in that process of the learning about self, right?
Yes, well, and in an infinite way. So one aspect, you're looking at yourself, okay? And you can ask very personal questions. Is this good for me? You know, is this better for me to do this or to wait? You know, you can ask about your past life and how that influences you now. All of that stuff is one aspect of exploring yourself. And then the other aspect, I'm big on curiosity. So I like to know about universes. I like to know about the influences of different aspects that shift our way of thinking and being. And so I'll ask about those things. The wisdom and information will come to me in a way that I can understand, which is brilliant about the Akashic Records, because obviously if it was giving me information that I didn't understand, then I wouldn't be getting the information, and they would just be laughing at me.
Right. No, I get you. I get you.
And so when we're looking at having that kind of aspect and using, in our conversation, using the Akashic Records as an understanding of the wisdom of the universe and how you play and explore, it has a level of awareness. Because you're not just going in there like you're at a supermarket and just grabbing stuff off the shelf and bringing it home and then see what you're going to make later. That's not how that is. This is a very, very conscious, aware, multidimensional spiritual realm that has information, guidance, wisdom, energy, et cetera, that you can access for your growth, your wisdom, and your well-being.
Mm.
And so when you connect with it, there is a level of consciousness and awareness that is actually required. Now, you're doing it anyway because you're trying to think of what am I going to ask. You're not, it isn't like you can go to the Akashic Records, just walk in and go, yo, dudes, hey, I'm just checking everything out. I'll be with you later. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. You actually go into the Akashic Records to put it in the library vernacular, to do research, to pull out the card catalog and look through to find the subject you're looking for, find the number for where the book is. You go to the shelf, you find the book, you pull it down, you look through it to find what you're looking for, just as using that as a metaphor. And it's really, I think it's extraordinary too. And also the fact that the importance of personal responsibility for the information and access to the Akashic records is basically explained because you are the seeker of your own paths to spirit. Nobody else can do it for you. It's like I've often said about our intuition and going within during, the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s. It's the only place in the universe of all of the dimensions that may or may not exist, all of the realms, the pathways, et cetera, energy, and so on and so forth. It's the only place that I know that I can go where nobody else can go. And that leads me to think that too, that there is a certain level, if I'm correct, of a sort of a certain level of security. I mean, you talk about sharing trust, as we talk about in this chapter. The Akashic records are set up in such a way that your information is protected. I mean, you can't protect it on the internet. Kiss that one goodbye. I mean, forget it. But
Yeah.
when it's the Akashic records, you have complete 100% security. Can I put it that way? Is that accurate?
Well, I would describe it a different way because
Okay.
again, there's the integrity level, right? So and it's not just our integrity, that's one part of it, but the keepers. The word protect seems a little harsh,
Okay.
but they I'm going to use the word, but they protect the information so that it resonates with the people who can access it, and they decide who can access it in a much more expansive way than we can actually describe it. You and I just talking about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, your personal information, that will depend. Not anybody can just go in there and get it. But on the other hand, there may be some access to information about you if your mother decides she wants to go into the Akashic Records and find out why you became her son. Well, the
Oh,
Akashic Records might reveal that to her because she's part of that information. She wants to know why you became her son and what were the gifts you brought her and what did she bring you, and maybe there were other lifetimes that the two of you were together and things that you shared. Now, she is accessing information about you, but it's not just looking you up.
right.
It's because there's a connection. And so it's protected in an integrity way. So, it's not going to be that I'm making this up because your mother obviously would never do anything like this. But let's just, say some crazy mother goes in there and says, Well, I want to look up my son's Akashic records because I really think he should support me for the rest of my life, and I want to know what ways I can access him so I can get him to support me.
Ah,
I'm not going to let that one happen, right?
right.
That's not in integrity, right? On the other hand, if you're looking at it and you're looking at your wife or your husband or your children, and you go, how many lifetimes has this amazing being been in my life? Well, you might get access to several. And you can actually look and go, they look so different back then, but their soul and their beauty is still just absolutely, still melts my heart. Even though it was 800 years ago, I would fall in love with them again.
Mm. Mm. Wow. Very cool. I find all of this extremely fascinating because it is another realm that I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think a lot of people know about
No,
this information and access to it, that we have it.
yes. Well, and that's why I wrote this book. See, when a lot of times I write books because there's a part of me that completely disagrees with the conversation at hand. It's just there's something in me that goes, wrong. Oh gosh, I have to write a book. Okay. So when we were talking about my book on living inspired, and I told you the story, I saw that commercial and it said, "Pork, be inspired." And I was like, no, no, no. Oh gosh, I have to write a book about inspiration. And what it really is that is like it, diminishes what inspiration really is. Well, the same thing with the Akashic records, where people would just say, "Oh, well, it's a library, and you go in and you look, and you can look in certain areas." And I'm like, "A library? You can't just go in there with a card and say, 'Yeah, I want this section.'" It's a multidimensional universe of wisdom that has keepers who will reveal things with the knowledge of every being who's coming in to look. It's a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to recognize that it isn't simply information that you're getting, it is, wisdom and vibrations, and sometimes accessing the Akashic records just by accessing them can completely change your life. Because you can look at the world in a completely different way. You can look at your life in a completely different way. I mean, some people don't know that they've had past lives. Some people don't know that the people that are in their life right now that are good aren't so good before. Some people don't know that what really excites them in life now was something they would have run from in another life. And some people are gifted with access to things that we might not recognize in this life or in this, dimensional world, but we are receiving guidance from other dimensions because we can, because we're aligned with that. That's how vast this is. Like the vastness of the Akashic records, and that's why, what inspired me and what was great about writing this book was that, I started writing it and I asked if I could speak to the Akashic records and, can I connect with them and everything, and I heard laughing in my head, like, laughing? Is that a bad thing to do? And they go, no, you've been speaking with us your whole life. You know us. Of course we're going to answer any question you want. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I didn't look at the Akashic records like that before, right? I looked at it like it was a world, a universe that you needed, access to and be granted, et cetera, which you do. But it was like, but I didn't realize I was having conversations with them my whole life, my whole many lifetimes. I was talking to them all the time. That's why they laughed at me. Like, you didn't know who you were talking to, did you? I'm like, oops. Nope. And it was a joke, and they were laughing at me, going, "Yeah, you thought all those thoughts were yours, didn't you?" I'm like, yeah. And they're like, no. Some of those thoughts were from us. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to
Well,
have to learn a new way.
exactly. Well, there's one other area we'll touch upon real quickly here. I kind of alluded to it, and maybe that's why the universe had me ask the question up front that was sort of a sidebar thing, that there are those beings of your planet who you do reach the records on a more regular basis and continually discover events of their past lives and present lives that give them clues to where they are in uncovering the underlying thrust of their natures and the events that stem out of their natures, which, as soon as the page will turn here, we'll get this all squared away, which basically we call those experiences. So there are people who, and I would take it that you might be one of them, who regularly or semi-regularly goes in and checks out your Akashic records.
Oh yes, and also I also explore other things. So sometimes I'm looking more for myself. If there's something more personal I want to understand, or more soul path that I'm interested in. And other times I go in because there's something that really is interesting,
Hmm.
and I actually want to know about it.
Should we develop on some level, and it doesn't have to be a high end thing, but on some level, an interest in our Akashic records for that purpose of, again, learning more about ourselves and why we're here, and maybe even in some instance we might be able to find out what our our life's purpose is, or at least get an idea as to, okay, which direction should I go today, or this period in my life, or this lifetime in general.
Well, yes. And so, one, I encourage everybody to read this book because in this book there is actually a couple of exercises that teaches you how to access the records. Obviously, you know this, but I do Akashic readings for people so that when they have some specific things or want to connect with certain energies, certain aspects of wisdom, or have different questions, I help them access it by me being the one who goes in, and then I share the wisdom. And you want to be able to, no matter what, have sacred curiosity, which means you just don't want to know it because you want to know it, but it's something that inspires you and makes you want to know more about something. Now, I use sacred because the easiest way and the most beautiful way of accessing higher spiritual and personal and conscious wisdom is connecting with the Akashic records. And you want to be able to ask those profound questions that are in spiritual questions, they're in consciousness questions. It's like, why is this inspiring me? Why am I called to do this? What makes me really want to follow this? I mean, those are broad questions, right? I would ask, bigger ones. How come the world spins in this direction? I might ask those, just to know, not because I'm going to be a scientist and do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
Like how much space is between molecules actually? I would ask just out of curiosity, not that I'm going to do anything with it.
Right.
Because it's molecules are not my passion, but it's well, that's a cool question. I wonder what the answer to that is.
Yeah.
I'm more that kind of person in my spiritual and personal journey. That's why I write books on a whole bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
But for you to be able to recognize, okay, here's this, because we're talking about my book and my wisdom there. Here's the Akashic Records, Collective Keepers of Divine Expression. Lumari wrote, what are the Akashic Records? I better read it. Ooh, what if I can connect and have some of the questions that I have about myself, my life, my purpose, my journey? What if I can ask them and start to receive spiritual wisdom and guidance?
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, well, wouldn't you want to do that? For me, it's a no-brainer question because that's what I'm always doing.
Yeah. Well,
And I love asking those questions.
and I love asking the questions too on this program. I often say the universe asks the questions. I'm just along for the ride, but our ride has just about come to an end. Lumari, thank you so much. And we will be back next week to tackle chapter 3 of the Akashic Records by Lumari.
Thank you so much, Richard. This is always just a beautiful experience. I thank you. Obviously, I invite anyone who's listening, and if you're not and you find this somewhere cool, contact me, get my meditations, and if you have curiosity, please, I would love to explore it with you. The divine is with us.
Absolutely. And until our next edition of Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, our next broadcast, podcast, video cast. Love to Lal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. To my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.